Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I know we're anxious for lunch, so unfortunately, this is a relatively short presentation, but something I wanted to take the opportunity to make folks aware of in this setting. It doesn't have to do with endangered species or anything else, but while I'm up here, I'd like to give huge kudos to Debbie, Ashley, Julie, and company for a perfectly timed symposium. I think we're at a point where I didn't know all this information about these endangered species was out there and being collected at such a level. I guess I knew you were doing your studies and stuff, but the synthesis that's really coming together here is really opened my eyes to how much progress we're making in terms of learning what we need to learn and cautiously making steps forward to improve things for them. So kudos again. So, but I'm actually here to talk about something completely different, and it's dealing with just actual Bosque management as opposed to something that's a little more target to removing saltcedar or getting my tongue stuck here. Or specifically planning for endangered species. It's when we do restoration projects, we create a disturbance, and with those disturbances come in all kinds of weeds and other things. And there's a big one that's made its way onto the scene here in the Albuquerque Reach just within the past 10 years that I'm mostly aware of and talking with other Bosque managers, and that's Ravenna grass. And so this is kind of a talk of basically real quickly what it is and, you know, kind of what we did on the Pueblo as a process to try and deal with it. So first of all, just what is Ravenna grass if you're not familiar? When I talk to people about it, I basically say, you know, are you familiar with pampas grass? Because a lot of people know that as a yard ornamental, and it's very similar to that. They are actually in the same family, but they are a different genus. So there's a story out there, many of you have heard this, that it was brought in by the zoo to feed the elephants, but even if that was one of the sources, there was probably other people already using it as an ornamental grass as well, and it's made its way into the Bosque, and there's different types of non-natives out there, and what I call like mulberry in the Bosque I don't worry about. It's a food source and it's not really aggressive, whereas Ravenna grass will come in and take over. So that's the important here. It's a huge prolific seed producer. And the culm, as you can see, the seed stalk can get really tall, and it sends up this little seed shoot that's really high, very full of seeds and very prolific. And as I mentioned, it looks similar to pampas grass, but they're actually different. But fortunately, we have both here in the Grande Valley and Phragmites. So all the plants we're familiar with that kind of stick a stalk up in the air and produce a fluffy seed head, we have all three now. So just to put that out there, but I'm mostly focused on Ravenna grass here. But just to point out, pampas grass, probably is the photo up there is right below the development on River's Edge development. So probably people had ornamentals in their yard, and now it's making its way into the Bosque. Here it is in the Riverside Drain just below the Amafka channel. And of course, Phragmites and Ravenna grass. And one thing you got to key in on is you look across and like, oh, that's all Ravenna grass. Well, that's what I thought when I first took this photo, but it's actually a mix of Phragmites and Ravenna. So learn your species and know what you're dealing with. So anyways, a little more on the side. You can see it's pretty well spread across the United States from Oregon Department of Agriculture info sheet. It apparently was been here for a long time as a cold hardy ornamental grass that can be used. And talking with Chad McKenna from GSA, he's noted it as far south as Tier C. I think Rio Rancho and Sandia are kind of the northern boundary. Talked to Nathan at Santa Ana. He hasn't seen it there yet, and I haven't seen it in Bernalillo. So this is kind of an opportunity, especially Rio Rancho, Corrales, and Sandia, to kind of hold that northern line, if you will. It's quickly spreading south, but as we know, the river will of course carry seeds down south, but any of you that do boating know the wind usually blows upstream, and so that's how plants distribute upstream. As I noted, it's aggressive. The photo here is from the Pueblo, and it's not the best photo, it's the best one I have, but you can really get a sense of once it gets a foothold in an area, it just takes over. And it's an aggressive non-native, meaning it's not just taking over disturbed areas or being opportunistic, which it does, but it also will just start spreading and pushing out stuff. And so that's part of the huge concern. The other huge concern, as I point out here, is the nature of the plant itself, with this big, huge area of grass blades that basically dry out, and this huge stalk with the fluffy seed head. Just think about building a campfire. It's prime, and these guys, what they do, and you can see how yellow this is. They dry out, and they're just a prime fire spreader. I mean, we're having these conversations in the previous talks about that balance between understory and fire, trying to deal with fuels reduction, but this one is just one you don't want, period. Not only because it's not native, but the fuels problem. The single biggest patches that I've seen actually are just north of the Paseo de Norte Bridge. If any of you came in that way, just look, or anytime you're going over Paseo on the north west side, that island, or not island, it's Bake Attached, is probably the single contiguous group of Ravenna I've seen. This one is just north of Alameda. So for somebody like Mr. Peterson there dealing with open space, it's at a scale already where it's huge and something to keep of. You might want to start thinking of like, okay, north and south boundaries, how do we just keep it contained to the areas until we can develop a more comprehensive plan to tackle it fully. But helping us keep kind of that northern line, if you will, would be really helpful, of course. Just now talking about what we did on Sandia, as I just mentioned, if you're not ready to tackle your entire infestation, start working on containment. Find out where your outer plants are. So that's what this map is. Actually shows both Tree of Heaven and Ravenna grass on the Pueblo, but where you see the red dot there and there, those are like isolated plants, or like 3 plants. So go get them, poison them, dig them up, whatever. I'll talk a little more about that in a second. Whereas here, this was basically in areas, it was multi-acre monoculture. And so we had to develop a different plan for going after that. And then it seeds in August going into September. And if you have a small enough area that you can deal with, that's, even if you can't kill the plant, obviously you can help ameliorate its spread by just cutting off the seed head, putting it in a bag, and disposing of it. Okay, so a couple of methods. Obviously, like everything else, we got chemical, we got mechanical, we got other cultural. The main things we targeted were first herbicide, just for containment, and then we went in and started digging like mad. So the herbicide method is triclopyr. The common herbicides we use in the Middle Rio Grande Valley are triclopyr and imazapyr, more commonly known as Garlon or Habitat. Garlon doesn't work because it doesn't work on grasses, which is why I use Garlon in the Pueblo's Bosque, because we have a lot of good grass cover in the Bosque, and so I don't want to hurt it. But of course that won't work on your grass being Ravenna grass. It is a grass, so therefore imazapyr is kind of your main choice. Like most species, and the problem with the plant is it's so huge around that a little bit of spray might kill your whole plant. But here's a case where we sprayed it in the spring, and sure enough, just didn't quite get the whole thing, and there it is growing back that fall. So just like all these treatments, what we're finding out, and what I learned, like when the Army Corps' Middle Rio Grande Restoration Project, is 5-10 follow-ups are needed for everything you ever go out and do in the Bosque. So plan to hit an area and plan to go back to it as soon as you can, outside of the bird season, of course, is what we do. So, and then we started going more to a digging method. Well, one of the challenges of the imazapyr is it stays active in the soil. So if you use it to kill something that's, say, right next to a patch of willow or cottonwood, you can actually have uptake by your non-target species, and so you're undoing what you tried to do. So we started digging out. Our containment method was basically to spray out a perimeter and isolated plants. Then we started digging out all the Ravenna that was directly under cottonwoods, which is going to be a problem for everybody that's dealing with bosque management, because we didn't want to spray imazapyr on those. And then it's real easy. It's just take a shovel, pull, keep going around until you get it, and then give it a big bear hug and pull it out. So, so it does have these really long roots. And so most of the roots you can see are fairly small, but you get these really long runners and stuff. That's probably where your resprout's going to happen, even when you dig out or use poison. So again, follow-up's going to be needed. And then What we do is we call in the Youth Corps, and I just want to put in a quick plug for them. They seem to be an underutilized resource here in the Middle Rio Grande Valley. They have a shop, Rocky Mountain Youth Corps has a shop set up at Valle de Oro and Ancestral Lands, which is a division of Southwest Conservation Corps that is Native American focused. Also has an Albuquerque office now. And so I was able to get a grant through BIA that the work plan included hiring one youth corps for the spring and one for the fall, so we could do a planned targeted follow-up, and brought them out. And so we had, we also went through a process of mowing it with brush saws, which is just like a weed eater with a saw blade instead of a string, to try and deal with the biomass. But that's something you got to think about when you target your Ravenna grasses. It's a huge amount of biomass, especially if you have a monoculture like we did. So we mowed it first. We kind of found that really all that did was kind of put everything on top of the plant, that then when we tried to spray it later, you couldn't necessarily see the resprout. So mixed bag on that, but just going in and starting to dig out the plant was really effective. Go back, like I said, you can see here where that was where we mowed it and then came back and dug it out. But really, if you go around it and then, you know, try what we did, which was a spring and then a fall follow-up. And so right now I'm waiting for the results, but we had very little resprout from what Ancestral Lands did in the spring. They did such a great job of, once we got going on digging the target plants under the cottonwoods, they did such a great job of digging. We just kind of made that the modus operandi. When Rocky Mountain Youth Corps came back in the fall, they just continued with the digging because it was only a couple days worth to complete this whole, you know, like I said, multi-acre areas. So there was a lot of digging, but we saved so much on herbicide that now I have money left over in the grant that I'm going to repurpose it to hire one of the youth corps again to come back and treat whatever resprouts we have next year. So, you know, with basically one, you know, $20,000 grant, I was able to tackle a fairly large infestation and you know, hopefully by the end of next year, Pueblo Sandia will be Ravenna grass free. And kudos, they're not here today. Unfortunately, Corrales has actually already targeted it. And if anybody's here from Rio Rancho, although I don't recognize anybody, yeah, come talk to me, because it's a great thing for your volunteers to get involved with, since everybody can do digging. All right, any questions? What's up? What's up, Dave?
One, is there anything native that looks like it that it could be mistaken for? And two, you mentioned fire. Does fire just make it mad like everything else does, or could you describe burn?
You know, in the burn, on the Pueblo, we do have a burn area, the Romero fire, that many people here are familiar with, and it has actually not come in that area. If you, that map I had, actually there's a gap, and that's where it's not. So strangely enough, it didn't take advantage of that. And I don't know if that's just the seed source didn't blow in at the right time or what, but, and then the first part of your question that I'm aware of, and some of you are better plant people than I am in this, especially Chad back there in the back, I'm not aware of anything that, you know, looks like it other than pampas grass, which is also non-native, or Phragmites that's also non-native. And oh, Bill Pentler has his hand up. Do you know something?
We have a type called Scialdone, which is a local that looks like it, but the seed net is much finer. It's actually almost wispy, but it's a distinct difference. But it does by the base. The base is percent.
Okay, that's good to know, because yeah. Thanks for asking that question, Dave. So if you're targeting it, be aware that you could be digging up something native. My experience is once you've recognized Ravenna, it's pretty distinct, more so than maybe the pampas grass, but what's up?
So you're saying it's being spread from yards. How can you get people to stop planting in the yards?
Anybody that can help with that, right? We have Sandia has the tail end of a flood control system that's designed to take all the trash and seeds of Albuquerque and send them down into the Rio Grande. So that's a continual problem that we're going to have. Even Southwest, Southwest native plants, the nursery on 4th, it's, you know, focused more on native. Even they were selling pampas grass and stuff like that they knew up till recently, and only because the woman you saw in the photo there, Cameron Weber, worked there and was like, stop selling this stuff. It's not native and it's crowding out. So anyway, so how to educate the public is a whole nother issue unto itself. So.
I just want to comment on the fire thing. I think it's a fire tolerant grass, so I wouldn't recommend burning it out. We have seen it come back after it's burned. They might not colonate a burned area, but I think it has no problem restoring.
Okay, yeah, I'm not recommending that as a method.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it is a fire my concern of it was as a fuels hazard. If I'm gonna have a fuels hazard, I'd rather it be a native understory. So, yeah.